Hey, how's it going? It's good to see you again. I want to apologize for not getting this video out any sooner. Obviously, being the noob that I am, I thought I could go through my editing software and push through as much of the editing process as possible. Obviously, I'm not that great at it and need to learn from my mistakes. The software ended up crashing on me and I lost most of my work. So I had to start again. So obviously this video's gonna be a little later than I wanted. So for today, we're gonna be making the background footage of my favorite video game of all time. It's called Chibi Robo. This thing is an incredible little storyline, and overall, it's really unique for its time. So, moving into gameplay here, I do want to clear a few things up because this is probably going to come across as another Let's Play type of setup, and idealistically, it's probably not going to be all that. And we're probably going to be skipping through a lot of unnecessary stuff. We're going to try to avoid little things like, oh, I did all this extra stuff in the background. And overall, just kind of be more focused in on the chilling out, talking about whatever. Doesn't always have to be about the game, can be just general dialogue, conversation. Hopefully, when I get to see some more of the comments down in the comments section, go ahead and leave something there. I can go ahead and respond to it in these kind of time periods. Getting that out of the way, though, this was one of like my absolute favorite games growing up, and back when I had first gotten into like some more serious gaming, I had moved on to the Xbox 360, as I'm sure some of you can remember that thing's launch. Way back then, I didn't exactly have all the money in the world. I was still a little kid at the time, and I needed extra funding, so I was actually selling off a lot of my old GameCube games. It's a big regret there, because seeing the price tags on those things nowadays, oh, it's ridiculous. Good example, like the Pokemon Coliseums, those things are going for crazy price tags. I remember selling that thing off because it was worth maybe like $20 additionally to get to the system. But one of the ones I was thankful I didn't get rid of was Chibi Robo here. It's probably incredible for that, but I think one of the biggest mistakes back then I did was I actually sold Super Smash Bros. Melee. That thing is crazy to try to get a copy of these days. You'd think it'd be a whole lot lower, especially with the fact that there's so many competitions going on with it still, but it's probably for that reason it's still super pricey. But way back then, there was a deal to like actually get this game. I still remember it today. I was sitting there watching the commercial, watching Chibi Robo kind of go around, do his little cleaning doodads. And then like the following commercial would be for, I think it was like AT&T at the time, way back when cell phones were still kind of new. We didn't exactly have unlimited talk, text, and data. We didn't even have unlimited data. That stuff was crazy. You were playing like solitaire on your Nokia or something. But back then the deal was $59.99 and you could get Chibi Robo, or you could spend $59.99 to get 1,000 minutes of talk and text. And I remember trying to use that as a conversation piece to convince my parents that she totally let me get this game. I don't think it was like the greatest selling point way back then, because obviously 1,000 minutes would be a whole lot better than giving your kids some game that'll keep them shut up for maybe, what, 200 minutes? But I remember getting this thing, I want to say it was for a birthday, and shoot, I remember I was playing the game for like hours and hours on end. So a quick side note coming up on it here. Do a bit of editing here and there, at least during this part, where we're trying to cut out a lot of the gameplay and just try to give you better background footage. Going forward, there's going to be a fair bit of editing. I'm going to try to speed up like sections where it's just me like cleaning the house, because obviously that's an entire gameplay feature. Gonna try to do some like montagey moments where it's like rapid tick, just clean, 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 or maybe we'll look into doing some like speed ups and whatnots, but time lapse thing, that's what I was looking for. Overall, editing will be probably really heavy for background footage for the sake of keeping the videos not like 30 minutes of let's just listen to the guy ramble. But the main goal is going to be just trying to keep things clean, keep this as a relatively fair length video so you can have just something going. Keep the background thoughts on pause for a minute. But yeah, one of the big things going into recording this game in particular, because I showcased a few of them when we were talking about doing like video games in the background. I have a couple of games that were like really like big favorites from when I was young, and I'm gonna see if I can't go back through them now as my rosy tinted goggles have been off for quite a few years, having to play some really, really bad games. Like, if you've heard of this, is Fallout 76. That game is by no means a good game. It's pretty bad. And having played that one for a few years, I can definitely say that I don't look at games for what I think they're supposed to be. I look at them for what they are and try to find the parts that I enjoy. That being said, I'm trying to go back through a couple of the old games that I just remember super fondly and see if they were actually all that or if they were actually really bad. And I just don't remember it because obviously nostalgia goggles are thick sometimes. That being said, I'm hoping to go forward with it a little bit. Just make it a bit of a series of just going through the older games, all being background footage. We're not going to let's play all that. That's probably not going to be the focus anytime soon. That being said, Chibi Robo is obviously going to be the first. There's some other ones I can put up on screen here. It would be Raw Danger was a really big game for a while there, at least for me. I don't know how popular it ended up being because you don't see it like anywhere on YouTube. But the game was all about like trying to survive a natural disaster, and it was exemplified by the fact that it became like a mega typhoon. Other ones in there is I want to go back through this game called Custom Robo. Put that one up here. Game was all about like building up your own personalized robot and trying to go through and like battle everybody there was, beat all the bad guys. Typical JRPG type game. And a third one, which would be a really long one, is my first video game I ever played back when I was like 3 or 4, maybe even 2, I can't remember, is this game called Phantasy Star Online Ep.1 and 2. This is a port from the Dreamcast that made it to GameCube, and this game has like way too much stuff going on with loot tables that exceed like 1 in like 30,000 or 300,000 drop chances. Game is nuts. So, getting back over here into some gameplay, one of the big things I'm going to be trying to focus on with making these is to not avoid the story, because one of the playthroughs I tried doing this before I started recording everything was I started to realize that there's some resources that can be farmed more infinitely. I will go further into that when we get to that point in the video background. But the main thing I want to do is to actually interact with the story so we can get through this game in a timely manner. Because, like with a lot of Let's Plays, they like to goof off and mess around with things. The main goal of using this stuff as background is to A, get that whole nostalgia check done, and B, just have some decent footage for the background. I don't want the footage to continuously be the same thing over and over and over again. We want to constantly try to change up the scenery and have different backgrounds. I don't see this game going much past maybe 10 or 12 of these types of episodes overall, especially with the speed that I'm able to keep up with it. And we're going to be fast forwarding through like all the clean and all the little doodads. For this section that we're actually on right now is going to be focusing in on giving you guys the basic principle of a lot of the way that the game works. Uh, After that, the only stuff that I'm really going to not speed through or hyper edit or time lapse my way through is going to be cutscenes where those will go slow and I'll kind of continue doing dialogue on top of that. Keep things smooth and flowing as well as I can. But thinking back on one of the previous topics, going back, do you guys remember like old flip phones? Things like the Nokia. Just, I was like, I was doing that like ad bit, and I'm like thinking back on it. It's like I remember getting like one of my first flip phones, and like some of those skills you would have back then. Like I don't know if you guys personally ever got to use them, but some of those phones they had like the buttons where you had to click multiple times to get a keypad. So like say you wanted to hit the letter C, you would have to click the number one like one, two, three times, and they had that available for each one of the nine buttons available on the phone. So like some of them had like three, some of them had like four different letters per button. And I can remember getting so good at it that you would put the phone behind your back and you could systematically remember, like, okay, I need to press three times, four two times, seven one time, and you could go back and forth and do entire paragraphs without looking at it. Because you would just like, I know how it's spelled, I know which numbers are which, click the button that many times. And that was such like a weird little skill set people used to have back then. And like nowadays it doesn't even matter because you got all these phones with like touch screens and you talk to the phone, be like, put the words in the words. And it'll be just all in text there. And honestly, like so many things are so much easier now. But it reminds me of a story going back. I was talking with a science teacher about how back in his generation they had really strong index fingers because they used to do the rotary phones where you would have to spin dial everything, whereas us, we have really strong thumbs from playing all the video games and stuff. It's just crazy how technology changes like that. Taking a quick break in that story, climbing the character up here, I wanted to point out this is a collectible thing up here. It's like a frog lollipop. It's one of 10 things you can kind of collect for the daughter. But yeah, back to the rambling about technology. Uh, just going through and being able to have access to the phones back then. Like I remember some of the old era games we used to get, like you could have access to like solitaire and whatnot. And a couple of them were ambitious. They tried to have these like 2D side scrolling gun games and it was crazy. Nothing really worked all that incredibly, but uh, it was something interesting for the time. Coming up here on the screen, there was this block here. This is one of those resources I was talking about being able to farm an infinite number of times. Because a bug that I came to realize is that every time you enter, like the Chibi house here, you can respawn all of the items that are outside of the Chibi house. And one of those such items is like the moolah or that blue box. For bit of use for making sure we can kind of progress the happy points system at a reasonable tick. I am going to go ahead and, like, whenever there's like extra downtime, I'll speed through runs of just knocking that box off over and over again. But overall, we're trying to avoid just doing that as like tons and tons of filler content. The main focus is going to be actually playing through the story and not just running that over and over again. And something you might have noticed there when we were throwing stuff out, I wasn't throwing away the cookies. I'm actually going to bring that up a little bit further into the video, because there's actually a different place you can bring the cookie crumbs that hold a bit better of a source of happy points and moolah and stuff like that. But going forward, you can see that like the gameplay feature, you can throw trash out to get extra happy points and whatnot, because it's really useful when you throw stuff away for people so they can make it quick and easy. It was one of the funny parts about the gameplay loop is that you get all these rewards for doing basic chores, and in the mindset of a kid, it's just a fun game. You're playing as this robot, you're running around doing all this stuff, and then you realize the subliminal messaging here is do your chores and get rewarded. And it's like that went totally over my head as a kid. I didn't even like pick up extra chores for that. It's just like I'm playing my game. This game is fun. I don't realize that I could be doing the same thing and probably getting the same kind of rewards. Instead, I'm playing my game and not getting out like a couple of quarters here and there for picking up trash and stuff. But I mean, it was an excellent push. I'd say like a marketing attempt to like really sell kids on cleaning up the house. Maybe you get like extra happiness and extra money from your parents. But something we can come up on here is we can actually come over and interact with Jenny, the daughter. And this is going to be one of those times where we can try to turn in those frog rings that we pulled up before. But another thing of note is there's a lot of things in this game that, as you interact with them and the ways that you do your gameplay, will affect the overarching, like how things are appear and how things will change. So, like, this is one of those interactions where just going and talking with Jenny, she'll ask if she can like draw you, and then she'll start working on that kind of art. And you'll see as time goes on that she'll slowly start drawing pictures of you and then maybe her and the family, and just things will change as you continuously interact. However, popping up here now, we can actually look to turn in the frog rings, and it'll actually yield a fairly high amount of happy points and moolah and stuff like that. So, bringing in these collectibles is a fast tracking way to progress your way through the happy point system. It's actually a relatively decent grind. As a fun little side note here, as I found a little bit of enjoyment, like adding voice commentary as I'm editing and going through and doing the little changes for like speeding things up, slowing things down. I'm getting to suffer like multiple crashes on the editing software I'm using. It's probably my fault for not updating it or using a free one, but I got to learn this some way or another. But I do think actually editing while doing the audio lets me like really customize the experience. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. As somebody who's like new to editing, I'm actually not too sure how a lot of people do voiceover stuff. If they edit the entire video through first and then they go ahead and add audio on top of that, or they do it in between like I'm doing it. So it's definitely a massive learning curve. But uh, so far, it's been an interesting time. Just trying to deal with all these crashes, getting to get me in the butt. Bit of a hiccup there in the audio, not too sure. But yeah, no, learning to do all of the editing is kind of the learning curve area that I'm in. I found a lot of enjoyment with just like slice cutting back and forth, like instances like here where it's like one after the next, super fast, like complete the action. Personally, it's like super intricate and sometimes a little bit messy, but it's become like a favorite staple to go for whenever I'm editing stuff. As a bit of a side note, I do try to make sure that throughout all of this recording, we're going to be able to see the happy point total kind of increase and climb its way up to the number one position, as I feel like that's a decent show of the progress of like where I'm at with the progression on that front. Obviously, it doesn't really affect the storyline super much, but by doing the story, you're able to increase the happy point leaderboard. It's kind of a secondary objective for you to follow along with. Overall, the storyline can actually be beaten without ever hitting the number one spot, which is a slightly interesting way to go about the game. I believe that you kind of want to have max score as fast as you can, mostly due to power requirements hidden behind the Chibi Blaster, which coming up here into the computer, we can actually take a look at. There's the shopping section and then the recyclotron, which is a later stage thing. But in terms of the shop, there's a bunch of different viable options. I'm choosing to go with the 15-minute timers that will increase the amount of time we can spend during the days and the nights, which should allow for a little bit more stuff to get done instead of just speeding through day, night. Uh, the recyclotron will come a little bit later on, though, so we can't do too much with it right now. And touching back on it, the Chibi Blaster thing that I had mentioned before is kind of a standardized tool. It's used to blast open different holes throughout the map, as well as open up different passageways. We'll talk more about it later on when we go ahead and buy it, but for right now, getting back over here to the manual thing. Uh, Unlike other people, I'm not going to tell you something like, well, you can go ahead and pause it if you want to read through. Uh, Instead, I tell you you should go out and buy it. But oh, uh, on second thought, maybe I don't want to endorse the idea of spending excessive sums to relive nostalgia. That's a price tag right there. I hadn't realized it had gotten so pricey. It's something else, isn't it? But another thing that I haven't started doing yet is really talking about the game. As you probably remember from the new things I'm going to be having with the channel video, talked about being able to talk about things going on in the game, stuff like that, and just random facts. The reason why it's not so much conversation about all that yet is because we're still kind of in the early point of this particular game in general. So there's a lot of tutorials and explanations before you can really start getting into gameplay and storyline and whatnot. On top of that, I really kind of want to get a general idea of how things are going to be going forward, the different games we'll play, and get a general feel for how I'm going to make these videos. So it's probably going to end up being a lot longer than I might want it to be. Maybe closer to 40 minutes than I thought it was going to be, like 20 minutes or something like that. But either way, I mean, it's definitely a learning curve. And hey, the idea is to sit down, chill, and do some stuff for a while. So it's not the biggest worry in the world. Gonna take a cool sidestep here for a second to stop talking about audio recording, gameplay, and to just do that regular human thing for a minute and realize that I'm slipping up in my dialogue and I'm making all these little mistakes. I'm like, oh man, what the heck am I talking about? And it's just, honestly, it's like I could be talking about any kind of story. I don't have to specifically sit here and talk about, oh, here's the editing process, yada, yada, yada. But I don't know. I still got to figure out exactly how this niche is going to go. I think with the advent of hopefully we get some comments that I can start reading off and keeping dialogue to, it'll be easier. I don't want to make it seem like that's the requirement. You don't have to put any sort of additional stuff for dialogue conversation. We're going to try to keep stories to a commonplace. Overall, though, I definitely think I'm just overstressing it and trying to like force out the best kind of content I can. And obviously, being new and inexperienced in this field, I definitely think I need some work. Maybe taking an improv class or something that could be a useful stepping stone. Uh, Overall, though, just learning how to get this all right has been a process. I think a lot of with the original where this series was me trying to replicate a lot of the video stuff that I'd seen elsewhere and not so much creating my own type of thing. with this, I'm really trying to branch off and not specifically follow any one person, which I'm sure with the millions of people that we have doing YouTube and stuff like that, I'm gonna copy somebody else out there. But uh, overall, I'm not so worried about it. This is gonna be more just what I want to do, and not so much like, oh, follow the trends. Minecraft's big, go play Minecraft. This other game's real big, go play that game. Not gonna need to do let's plays where we goof around and try to figure this thing out and uh, do like some sort of reactionary or even just tutorially stuff, which, I mean, all that is good and aside, but I feel like if I started doing that, I'd be trying to copy after people that I know do really well. It was a big problem with the earlier videos, uh, how I would add audio when maybe it wasn't like the best timing, which I definitely think that at the time that was some of the best work I could probably put out, and I think I did real well with it. Editing was pretty decent back then. I do want to see if I can't get to a better degree with editing now. Maybe see if I can't find some classes somewhere, really get into this. Because I feel like editing is definitely been taking a turn more recently in the YouTube community. People are putting in like really higher and higher levels of work to it. And uh, an idea, like one of my favorite content creators to go after, I'm sure you've heard of, is Let's Game It Out, and how he'll do these transitions where it's like 20 to 30 hours of like gameplay to do like some small joke and stuff like that. And I think some of that stuff's really cool. People really be stepping up the game with just how you do your edits. So it's like uh, little cutscenes and hyper edits and stuff like that. And some people do it as time lapsing and things like that. But I definitely think we're getting to a new spot in it all where bringing things in, like I'm trying to do all these extra side image pop ups, stuff like that. And that's like for me, that's way above what I'd always done before. But seeing how everybody else on the internet's going with it, definitely something to try to chase after. Overall, I hope that this stuff can be entertaining because obviously, if you're sitting there and watching this content instead of just listening to the rambles of the weird dude on the internet who's trying to keep the bad thoughts at bay, then I want to try to make it look interesting so you can kind of follow along with stuff. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that it doesn't drift into, ooh, watch this epic montage. Wrong. I think there's still going to be a place in my channel for let's play like content. I think what another series I was debating on doing is say if I get a new game or I do want to play something newer, then I might have a secondary playlist type of thing called authentic loud reactions where I'll throw a lot more vocalization as opposed to this obviously low toned, low effort vocal. Uh, Overall, I think that would be a different type of video and would be a little bit more focused in on just reacting to the gameplay itself. I don't know when something like that might occur. I'd say it's probably going to happen way later, if at all. For right now, I think the newest thing I might dabble into is going to be like doing some of those like real world type videos. Because I think at some point it'd be really cool because I picked up camera, do some like GoPro type video where it's just like hiking up a mountain with a co-star, something silly like that. I think it'd be a little bit more chill, especially if we're overlooking like a mountain or something like that when we get up to the top. Try to do a lot of transitions, cutscenes, stuff like that. Because one big thing I'm trying to do with the channel is I want to be really authentic. And I don't mean like other people aren't authentic. I mean more in the way of a lot of people do like, here's the deleted scenes, here's the outtakes. With this, I don't want to like edit out all of the little mess ups, which obviously, if I've got a bad take somewhere in here, I'm probably going to get rid of it. usually to signify to myself if I'm going back through recording clips and stuff like that. I'll make a little raspberry sound at the end to be like, oh, well, don't use this one. Uh, that being said, I do want to mostly make it so that my videos will contain that human element of watching me mess up and still trying to keep going with it because then it's, I think, a little bit more relatable in that sense. But that's just me. And one thing I do want to bring up, as I'd said it before, in terms of like, say, the real life videos of hiking up a mountain with a co star, forgive me for using this probably totally clickbaity image right here, but this co star would be my dog. Her name is Clover. And big piece to the going on the nature trips would be going for a long hike, taking the dog, getting that scenic aspect. So videos may have a bit more panting, boofing, and woofing here and there. But she is my cuddle monster, as she occasionally, like now, hops up in the chair with me while I'm doing stuff on the computer, trying to edit the video. And nope, right now it's petting time. So she's a fun little guest star. And when I gotta say, going through a lot of the recordings here, and like I'm doing like a lot of the mini edits you've probably looked at for the video aspect, and it's like I keep seeing these points where it's like climbing up to get like the frog pop or pulling out the chibi blaster, and it's like, man, I had all these ideas for like dialogue that I was gonna say for these exact parts. It's like, oh, let's the blaster, let's explain the blaster, and then like the dialogue's going through. I'm like, oh man, I did not think that out ahead of the edits. And it's like I'm not gonna undo any of the audio and whatnot else. And it's like there's tons of stuff there, obviously. Like do the funky audio thing here or there, but honestly, going through, especially with how the content is designed to be, I think it's just better to freeform what kind of audio is gonna be like active up on the recording as opposed to pre-planning things. Because like obviously, like as life goes, yeah, you're eventually just gonna like plan something out and it's just not gonna work out. And honestly, it's kind of nicer this way because I don't have to rely on like pre-planning a script or something like that, which let's be honest, it would probably get time consuming and extend the duration in between video to video, which I don't know how rapidly these are going to come out. I'm not planning to mass produce like a billion episodes that are all like 15 minutes that only took 20 minutes to make and 5 minutes to edit. Because I think that's what I was doing with the other ones is I would make like 10 videos at a time. It's probably pretty obvious, but sometimes that's nice, sometimes that's not. I don't know if it'll be actively on screen though when we get to this point in the dialogue. But one of the scenes that I just passed was entering with the what's known as the hard-boiled eggs. They're kind of like a military, and wanted to like have dialogue talking about how like this is the true version of a bullet hell because like there's all the shots just getting pinged off all around the room, and that's something I'd struggled with a lot when I was a kid. Was just trying to brute force my way through that, and while I think I definitely could do it now, I don't know. I feel like it'd just be better to play it through the story wise. Aside from trying to brute force, like, ooh, can I make it to the end of this room without taking any damage? Which, maybe could be a fun challenge run one of these days, but overall, interesting piece. But yeah, that's probably the earliest instance of bullet hells that I have for video game history. Just way too many shots on screen. That stuff was nuts. Editing process here, I'm really kind of coming to the realization that there is a massive difference in the mindset between Let's Play and just what we're doing now. Where, as for the Let's Play, there's several moments where he'll like stop and like point out this thing or that thing, and I was going through with like a lot of the edits and like cutting out like 6, 7, 8 minute chunks, just realizing that like I was trying to pan and look at something silly and be like, yeah, let's record that thing and then point it out to everybody. And it's like,
getting to step away from that and just have the recording in the background while we sit here, chat, chill, and talk about whatever. It's like that's such a liberating feeling in terms of the editorial process because I don't have to specifically target anything to then come up with dialogue about it and then talk about it for a while. And that's just nice because you're doing all of the editing based off of like these key moments. You have to make sure you time your correct jokes and dialogue in the moment, or you have to just go ahead and like record in the moment. Man, overall, it's a nicer feeling having it done this way. But actually, coming up here on storyline is one of the more important areas. Let's actually take a chance to actually talk about the game for once. You can get a lot of dialogue once getting into the kitchen, where you can talk to Miss Sanderson. You can really start to see the troubles between the relationship between Miss Sanderson and Mr. Sanderson, as well as finding a lot of the key items in here that she just kind of tells you to take because ain't nobody gonna miss it. Like getting the cup head here, or just the cup in general. We can actually use that back in the foyer area for where I described the bullet hell. That's kind of the way you're supposed to get yourself through all that. Up on screen now is one of the reasons I kept all those crumbs, is because we can actually feed them to the fish, and the fish give us a much higher amount of happy points than if you throw them in the trash. So I try to hold on to all of those just for the express purpose of feeding them, because overall, the happy point gain is just way better.
So, with the magic of a bit of editing and a certain amount of time dilation, managed to get another piece to my new recording setup. Uh, Went out and got a microphone arm. So, for now, I'm going to go ahead and give a test and see how recording with a microphone right up to my good old smackers. God, that is such a horrible word. Uh, yeah, no, I'm going to be testing under the guise of how audio might sound up close and personal. Especially if we spec into that ASMR thing, I can get real low and just kind of say hi. So stupid. Anyways, yeah, so we're going to be playing around with this for a bit. Uh, Honestly, though, going through this recording, it's been teaching me a lot and trying to get myself ready for recording going forward. It's been interesting. I'm trying to get some basic starter gear. Like, obviously, I picked up a GoPro so we could do like hiking videos uh, or just out in nature videos because I feel like getting background shots that are actual hills and like roaming valleys might be a little bit more interesting than the same generic insert random video game here for 40 points, Alex. But I mean, I do want to do a lot of like gaming stuff here and there, but definitely need to be able to split it up. And of course, the co-star Clover the dog would love to go for a lot more trips outside. But I think what's getting crazy is like around this time of year, the snow's starting to pile up, and it's like I don't know how keen I am on going hiking out in the mountains when there's like footing issues and honestly that cold and stuff is crazy. I don't know how you guys handle it, but me personally, I'd gone through some fitness changes and my overall health had gotten a lot more improved. And after that, I wasn't able to maintain like cold anymore. Like I used to be able to go outside with uh, like shorts when it was like 26 or like there's snow on the ground. It's enough to cover the top of your shoes. I'm out here in shorts and a t-shirt, and like now I'm like three pairs of socks, sweatpants and snow pants, three layers of shirts and a sweater. It's just not warm enough. Get like heated jackets and like your pants, your scarves, your gloves. It's like it feels like an entire armory going on to a single person just trying to combat weather. It's insane. I don't know. It's just all these like small time things you don't think about. And honestly, like the differences between like what's normal and what's not based off of like slight changes in how you go your day to day. And honestly, the getting used to it fact, really similar to with changes how we're going to go through here on YouTube, where all of it before was doing like, let's record the basic let's play, let's talk about what's going on. And now it's going to be a lot more of just talking about whatever like we're doing now. Don't need to focus on any specific topic. Maybe we're talking about the game, maybe we're not. Maybe we're just griping about how the cold's it's horrible. And then maybe I'm being interrupted by Clover's Dock. Do you need more attention? Yes, hello. It's always great having a Cuddlebug that comes and interrupts your recording sessions, isn't it? But yeah, no, overall, it's going to be a interesting time so far, and I think that going forward, the videos should be a little shorter. I think this one totals out for something like 42 minutes or something like that. It's crazy. But going forward, we should definitely be aiming more towards like 25 minutes, 28 minutes, or something like that. And I should be able to narrow in more on stories. I'll try to prepare some ahead of time as opposed to just free winging it like this time. Because, well, free winging it's good. I feel like I should have a little bit more like bullet points and like certain topics to cover. That way, it's not so much just, hey, press the record button now. Hey, press the record button now, and free forming like, throw more random stuff at the wall and see what sticks. Because like that'll work out for a little bit, but at some point, somebody's gonna look at it like, what the hell are you putting on YouTube? Like that is not. We're not here for this. We're here to watch you like put out like actual stuff, not whatever noise you're trying to do now. But honestly, if I start getting comments like that, I'm probably going to laugh a little bit because it means that somebody felt the need to put a comment down and then complain about my lack there of comments to talk about, subsequently creating me something to talk about based on the comments. It's going to be a great little culmination. Anyways, on that note, if you guys do want to put stuff down in the comments, because we're getting close to the end of the video here, be really appreciated to give me something to talk about, and I can talk with you in that either one-on-one or maybe even a group setting. Try to combat a couple of these at a time. If you enjoy this type of content, even though it's really silly and really dumb what I've put together so far, then I'd appreciate a like. Helps me know what you guys like and don't like. And if you want to stick around and see what other unintelligible, random BS I can manage to create and come up with, then I'd say go ahead and feel free to subscribe. Overall, it's definitely going to be a learning curve, and I hope you guys are willing to stick it out and deal with me and figuring out what I'm doing along the way. Overall, I think that there's going to be something decent coming up here, and we're going to be able to create something a little bit more interesting than any of my previous content. But as a closing note, I appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully that my random ramblings was able to keep you entertained for a little bit and keep them bad thoughts away. Hopefully I'll see you guys again, though. Catch you later in the next one. Bye-bye.